So, good evening, everybody. It's so nice to see you again to our second lecture this very season, Career Launch Season 17. It's been a blast so far, so thank you for coming. For the few students that were able to come here, being vaccinated and tested, so thank you for that. And of course, all the people watching live on YouTube or afterwards. If you haven't, please suit yourself, get yourself a beer in the back. And yeah, we want to say welcome, everybody from the Lounge team. The season is called Balance of Perspectives, so our goal is to unite a lot of different perspectives, get in the view and balance ourselves where we can share opinions, maybe talk about opinions. So we asked all our lecturers the same 3 questions, and they were completely free to answer those questions. They're about design-related questions, but also personal questions. So maybe you can ask yourself, or you can ask questions after the talk from our lecturer. So make sure to write questions in the comment section on YouTube, or just raise your hand, we will come to you. But there will be time for discussion later. So now, without further ado, our next lecturer is a creative coder. He is an interaction designer. He's an artist, and in his work, he combines machine learning in very unsuspected or unconventional ways. He has a very creative and fun way of dealing with new technologies and creating something new. So he's live from Copenhagen. Please welcome Andreas Refsgaard.
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for the invitation. Thanks for presenting me, and thanks for the very nice intro video. That's actually the nicest intro video I've seen for myself ever. So thanks so much for that. My name is Andreas Refsgaard. I'm here with you from Copenhagen. I've been ill for the last week. I'm kind of almost okay today, but I haven't spoken in a while. So if my voice breaks up, it's because I've been kind of in bed for the last week. But it's not contagious, at least not over the screen, I hope. I think I will share my screen. I'll do a presentation about myself. I'll do a lot of live demos, and then afterwards we'll have time for some questions. Okay, so let's see here. Okay. So what I'll talk about in this talk is that I'll talk about machines that classify, how I use machine learning to teach machines to tell things from each other. Then I'll talk about machines that generate new stuff, that generate text, or that generates images. And then I'll do quite a lot of live demos. This will be somewhat interactive. And live demos often kind of don't work. So that's why the emoji, we'll see kind of how it goes. In my work, I do lots of different things. I do a lot of artistic work with machine learning and computers as my tools. I've also recently written a book about that. It's in Danish though, so if anyone's interested in learning Danish, you can maybe pick up that book, but it's about using computers and machine learning for arts and for creative purposes. Then I teach quite a lot of workshops all over Europe mainly, a lot of them also online. And then finally, I do quite a lot of freelance work. I'm not going to show too much of the freelance work. I'll mainly focus on the artistic stuff in this talk. So a lot of my work, my personal work, deals with novel combinations of inputs and outputs. So what does that mean? It's because I'm trained as an interaction designer, I like to kind of use the computer to combine things that you don't normally see combined. And an example of that is my final project from when I was a student. I studied interaction design in Copenhagen. And for the final project, we didn't have to write any thesis. We just had to build a project. So I ended up spending 8 weeks building this tool that allows me, people to play music in new and novel ways. Let's just have a look at that. And if the sound doesn't work, then please tell me, either shout it out loud or say it in the chat if the sound doesn't work. It's a musical instrument for people with physical disabilities that allows them to play by only using their eyes and facial gestures. This is a sequencer where if I look at one point for 2 seconds, then I insert a beat. Åbn munden. So after having worked on this project as a student, I got really interested in machine learning because the way I made the project, I used other people's code for doing stuff like face tracking, or I used a little eye tracker, a commercial eye tracker to track people's eyes. And I found out that these techniques, face tracking and eye tracking, were powered by this thing called machine learning. So I got super interested in like kind of trying to figure out how it works. Can I integrate it in my own artistic or interaction design way of working? I started kind of right away, before I really understood what it was, I started just trying to build stuff with machine learning and trying to teach other people about machine learning. And that led me to get quite a big project for Google Creative Lab in New York. So Google Creative Lab asked me and a guy I was working with at the time, his name is Lasse Korsgaard, and you'll see him a bit later in a video clip, but they asked us to help them build a website that could kind of teach people what machine learning was, but also could showcase a new machine learning library that Google had built that could run machine learning stuff directly in the browser. And that became Teachable Machine, the first version, at least, of Teachable Machine. So the way Teachable Machine works, it's this URL. Maybe it'll also be shared later on. But Teachable Machine with Google /V1. The way it works is that you can teach a machine using your camera live in the browser without doing any coding. And in a way, that's to some extent also the magic of machine learning. You can teach systems just by showing what the interactions are. So right now we see 3 different parts. We see an input, that's my webcam feed. Then we see a learning part where I can teach the system about the green class, the purple class, and the orange class. And then finally, we see an output part where it can display silly GIFs or do sounds or maybe say something out loud. I think I'll try to teach this system to distinguish me, which will just be a face, from my hand and from this unicorn. So let's try that out. So I'll be a face. So I'm just going to find a GIF for face. Yeah, that one. Kind of not very impressed looking face. Then we'll do the purple class. That will be the unicorn. So I'll find a unicorn. And this one is nice. And then maybe the last one will be hand. Yeah, this one, Terminator hand, right? Okay, so now I kind of established the three classes, and now I need to try to give it some examples. So the first class is face, so therefore I will record some examples of just my own face on the green class. And I'll give it a bit of variation. And now it's pretty sure that what it's seeing is the face. It has a confidence that is really high, and it's outputting the GIF associated to the green face. However, if I show it something else, or if I move away, it still thinks that this is the green class because it hasn't been taught about any other classes. In order to be able to distinguish between multiple things, the machine needs to be taught examples of different things. So the examples are simply just small snapshots from the webcam. So let's try to teach it about the unicorn. Okay, so now it goes unicorn and face, and unicorn and face. And finally, we'll do the hand, like so. And now it's pretty good at picking up hand, face, and unicorn. Okay, so a lot of my work, if you want to try this out, this is the URL, but quite a lot of my work, at least early on, was about like building something fun on top of machines that I taught to classify specific things. So this is one example. It's built in collaboration with an American artist. His name is Gene Kogan. We met in Berlin. Now he's on the west coast of the US. But he invited me to join him at a hackathon organized by IBM in Seoul, South Korea. And at that hackathon, we built different things, but one of them was this joint project that we call Doodle Tunes. And the idea is that we taught a system to recognize drawings of musical instruments on regular paper. And then we had a camera facing downwards so people could draw whatever they wanted. And then it will try to see if it could recognize any of the instruments we trained it to recognize. And thereby you could actually start composing music. So from a technical point of view, it then sent signals to Ableton, which is a music software, so to output music. So let's try to see it. I'm actually right now in the process of trying to redo this project so it works live in the browser. I'm not that far yet, so what you'll see will be a very lo-fi prototype. But let's try to have a look. Okay, so I added some additional things. So here you see that you're able to draw a piano, drums, bass guitar, saxophone, bicycle, but then also a saw, a dog, and a bird. So some of these things you can draw are not necessarily super musical. Then you also have a hard mode and an easy mode. So let's try to do the hard mode first. So if I draw something like this, it's going to try to guess. Right now it thinks maybe I'm drawing a keyboard or pool or bench or pillow, but what I actually want to draw is a piano. So I'm going to add some keys, and now it thinks I'm drawing a jail, which is maybe not what I want. So, oh no, how do I make this into a piano? Okay, so now it goes back to keyboard. Okay, so more things actually makes it into a piano. I can also try to like do these black tangents, and now it becomes more and more sure that this is a piano. So now I will add the piano sound, and then I'll try to draw something else. Okay. So now I'm gonna try to draw a saw, see if this works. Binoculars, no. Oh, okay. So right now I'm in a bit of a mess. This will never be a saw. I could try again, but I could also switch to the easy mode. And here it's like, okay, 5% saw. Fair enough. How about a bird? Oh, no, it's a bird. Okay, bird. Yay. Okay. And then maybe drums. Yay, drums. Bass. Yay, guitar. Okay. Saxophone. Yes. And maybe some more pianos. You can actually draw more things that are similar. Oops. Piano. And then mic. Yeah, more or less, right? Okay. So you get the idea. We're gonna stop the madness. We'll come back to some drawing stuff later on. Okay. So a fun thing about this project, Jean and I took the source code for it and then removed the music part, so it just became a doodle classifier, a tool that you could use if you wanted to teach a system about this different stuff you were drawing, and then it could kind of classify new instances of that thing. And we taught a lot of workshops all over Europe mainly, but also some in the US and Costa Rica and India. And for those workshops, we developed kind of our own little workshop kit. And that thing where we allowed people to recognize drawings, that became a thing called Doodle Classifier that we just put out online so everyone could use it. And then we found out that someone else was using it, but for something completely different. So there was a blog post by this US company, Airbnb, where they made a video where to the right, you see our tool being used, but to the left, it's something completely different. So they go from wireframes of mobile website designs to actually producing React.js code that gives you code for such websites. Of course, it's a bit kind of generic. The image is always the same, the headlines are always the same, the buttons are always the same, but it's an interesting kind of way of seeing how you go from something just on paper to something that actually becomes code, where the classification is powered by machine learning. So that's interesting to see how these tools can be used for very different things. It's also interesting to see how huge companies can use artists for free research and development. Okay, but back to some more drawing stuff. So recently, or maybe I think a year or two ago, there was a really nice project that came out called Doodle Rig by Lyndon Huang from Carnegie Mellon University. And you see that on the left, where his tool allows people to draw stuff, and then it tries to calculate where a skeleton might be for that drawing. And it does so, yeah, kind of automatically. And then you can use maybe sine or cosine waves to kind of make the thing somewhat come to life in a really funny way. And I used that for a project in Denmark during COVID times from a Danish local library, and we called it the drawing machine. So it's very much based on this idea by Lyndon Huang. It's also in Danish. You can try it out if you feel like it. It's in Danish, and the system is then trained to recognize human beings, fish, birds, ships, vehicles, and plants, and also animals with 4 legs. So I'm going to try to draw something, and then hopefully it'll try to guess what it is I'm drawing. So it says thinking, and now it's going to ask me, is this a fish? And yes, it is a fish. So the fish will then kind of come alive and start moving around. I'm going to draw something else. So now it's thinking. It says, I'm not sure what you drew. I'm I'm gonna help it out a bit by drawing this very, very nice car. Volkswagen, maybe, I don't know. Oh, and now it asks me, is this a vehicle? Yes, it is a vehicle, and then the car will kind of move down there. Okay, we can also try to draw something else. So kind of like a, maybe, I don't know, human being. Like this. Very happy one. Oh, it asks if this is a bird. So that's not right, but it doesn't matter. Now the bird can kind of live up there. Oh no, I'm gonna try one more time if I can make a human being. Oops. Yeah, so it's not super accurate. Okay, human being. Okay, it needs some eyes though. Like this. Yeah, human being. Okay, so now the human being is there, and then the grand finale. I've practiced a lot on this, and this is drawing a horse. So I'm very good at drawing horses, which you'll see right now. So the key is like you draw 2 legs, then 2 legs here, and then you draw that thing, and then here. And now you're thinking it's not really a horse, no, but you need to give it some hair. So it has long hair, and also hair here, and then it has a big mouth with teeth. So this is a horse. Yes. Yeah, that's a horse, right? Okay. So this is really fun, but credit goes to Lyndon Huang, who kind of made all of this possible with Doodle Rig. My thing is just a small little tweak. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, this is the URL if you want to try it out. Yeah, I think earlier on I mentioned that I used lots of weird combinations of inputs and outputs, and machine learning is actually also pretty good at dealing with lots of novel combinations of inputs and outputs, just as long as it can be translated into something that the machine can understand, for instance, numeric numbers. And in this video, you see my friend Lasse Korsgaard, who is also part of making the first version of Teachable Machine for Google. Me and him back 4 years ago, we did a lot of experiments with interactive machine learning. And we also did some with sound. So instead of using drawings or using webcam, using something image related as input, we used sound as input. And then we tried to train machine learning algorithms to recognize specific sounds. And in this video, you see a very, very early little demo where we taught a system to recognize when Lasse whistles, when he does like that. And then we're playing this little game, jumping dinosaur game in the Chrome browser, just by Lasse whistling. So we thought that was really fun, but it was maybe a bit too simple. So what if you could do multiple things, both jump and duck? And for a kids exhibition in Belgium at a festival called Kick Festival, which I really recommend. It's a very nice festival. It's every year in November in a town called Namur. Then Lasse and I built this little game called Sound Controlled Intergalactic Teddy. Actually, the graphics is made by Lasse's girlfriend, Amalie. And here you can do multiple things. So you can both jump and duck. And then we established very specific sounds for jumping and for ducking. So you say oh, or you clap. And then we try to let people play that game. Let's have a look.
Oh!
Okay. It's actually featured in something called AI experiments. So there's a link down here if you want to try it out. It also runs in the browser. Another project that I've made is going back to images as an input, but then the output becomes poetry. So it's a project called Poems About Things that tries to generate poetry from everyday objects that are around us. And it's based on a mobile website. So you walk around with your phone, and then on the website, there's a built-in machine learning model that tries to guess what it is you're seeing through the lens of the camera on your mobile phone. So it tries to guess on espresso or banana or something like that. And then it sends that word to Google Suggest, which is the same thing that happens when you try to search for something on Google, and Google kind of already knows what it is you maybe are searching for. I then use all of those search suggestions to try to generate a poem about the object that is recognized. And sometimes the object is recognized correctly, like a laptop maybe. Sometimes it's not classified correctly. Or sometimes the classification can kind of have multiple meanings, like the word organ. So you end up with these weird poems that kind of make your everyday life a bit more weird. So this is one of my favorite poems made with this project. It's from a workshop in Eindhoven, and at the Design Academy, and there was a student, and I have his permission to use this image, but he was super interested in what kind of poems would come out of the system if he pointed the camera towards his own body. And the built-in object detection model that I used was not taught to recognize human beings and neither to recognize specific parts of human bodies. So kind of in the same way that my teachable machine that I taught before, it could only recognize face, hand, and unicorn. Then this one was trained to recognize 1,000 categories, but none of them were human beings and none of them were like upper body or something like that. So it was mainly trained to recognize animals and plants, but also everyday objects. So it tries to guess as best as it can. And in this case, it guesses fur coat, which is a really interesting guess in a way. I think maybe a beautiful hairy chest is nature's original fur coat for human beings. But then it's a bit suspicious. So Google tries to ask questions like, is my fur coat real? Is it worth anything? Is it made out of mink, etc.? Okay. You can actually also try that live if you feel like it. This is a URL that will open the project, and then you can try it out. I think I'm running slightly out of time with all my live demos, so I'll skip that for now. But you can try it, and you can also remix my project if you feel like it. This next project is called Books by AI, and it kind of also deals with poetry, but with written words, but instead of just doing poems, it tries to do entire books. So it's a bookstore that sells science fiction novels that are generated by artificial intelligence. So if you're tired of books written by human authors, then you can try Books by AI. So we trained it on science fiction books, and then we generated everything, meaning that we generated the titles for the books, we generated the covers for the books, we generated the author names, we generated the descriptions, we generated the content summary, we generated the prices as well. The training data for the text comes from Amazon.com and Project Gutenberg, and then we use something called char-RNN TensorFlow to train. And then for the book covers, we used images of other book covers from Open Library, and then an early GAN model called progressive growing of GANs. And this is a project that is a few years old, so neither the covers nor the stories became super good, to be honest. So, but still, nonetheless, we had this website and we wanted to sell these books. Well, how do you sell mediocre books? You need someone who recommends the books to potential buyers. So we generated a lot of people that didn't exist using GAN technology. And then we trained another algorithm on mainly positive reviews of other people's books on Amazon.com. So now we have this whole army of people reviewing our books in very positive ways. And I think actually I'll stop this video and then I'm going to show you the website. So it's just bookbuy.ai. And yeah, the books are from back, I think they are from like 2019, so they're not that good. I hope to make some new books pretty soon. So here are some of the selected reviews, and I really like this review. Actually, the text model that we trained is something called char-RNN, so it learns character by character. In the beginning, it can't even write stuff in English. It just writes like totally random characters, but then over time, when it has seen lots of data, it learns to write. However, for the reviews, we kind of stopped it a bit early. So it comes up with its own words that don't really exist. As, for instance, a word like knudung. And I think a word like knudung is a very good way to describe this book. It's not really necessarily a good book or a bad book, but it's a knudung book. So now you can buy these books and get them shipped to you from Amazon.com. And now real people are actually reviewing the books. So here you see one of them. And this book has 3 ratings. So some people rate it with 5 stars, some people rate it with 1 star. And I think at least some of the people who are buying it are real people. But I don't know. We also generated these fake people. Yeah. It's made in collaboration with a Danish data scientist who was my intern at the time, Mikkel Tybolose. And on the website, you can also learn quite a lot more about how it actually worked and the entire tech stack behind it. Yeah. Okay, I need to go back here. Okay, so this next project is called Erasing Enhancing Essentials. And it's a bit of a complicated project, but I'll try to do it in a simple way. What I was interested in with this project was to try to let computers decide what parts of images were the most interesting. So when you look at an image, then your eye will kind of go towards a certain part of that image. And researchers from, for instance, marketing are really interested in trying to predict where people are looking, because that is really good if you want to sell ads, for instance, to predict that people are like really attracted to when they see other people, or people look more in the left corner than in the right corner or something like that. So some researchers made a model that, given any image, would try to draw a heat map of where it was most likely that other human beings would look when they saw that image. So that's the thing you see in the middle. That's kind of the heat map. So given this painting, it predicts that these are the most, the main essential part of the image. And then I try to draw a mask around that essential part. And then I do 2 things. Either I erase that part or I enhance that part. So if I erase that part, then I get this very cold, empty scene where nothing is really happening. But if I enhance the part, then I get a very dense, weird collage where all the pixels are kind of fighting for my attention. And let's try to see it in action with an image. So here you see Steve Jobs holding a iPod. Here's the heat map of what the computer thinks is the most interesting part. Here it's the interesting part enhanced, and here erased. Okay, let's try another one. So these are puppies. And the heat map. The most interesting parts enhanced, or the most interesting parts erased. I also did this on another set of images for an exhibition at a Danish art museum called Argos. And it was part of a group exhibition around the kind of human and robots. In a sense, it was called Monstrous Machines. So I found lots of robots, androids from science fiction movies throughout history. And then I tried to run them through some of these techniques. So here you see some of the outputs. If people are interested in trying this live, like trying to have a computer estimate what part of an image is the most interesting, then here's actually a demo that does something similar to that live with your webcam. So you can try that out if you feel like it. Okay. Another project, which is also mainly, mainly a visual project, is this one called Enter the Art. So it's a project made in collaboration with the National Museum of Art in Copenhagen. And the idea is to try to bring visitors to the museum, whether it's physical visitors or because this was made in Corona, maybe just visitors to the website of the museum, try to bring them into the paintings from the museum's collection. That process involves a few different steps. So first off, you need to take a picture of yourself. It can be just you, or it can be multiple people. So here, me and my friend Mads, we took on our best autumn clothes because it's getting dark and cold in Denmark, at least. So we dressed up for the occasion, and then we need to be kind of masked out. We need to be cut out of the background. So you can of course do that in something like Photoshop, but there's lots of algorithms that can now do that automatically. They can try to guess which pixels belong to a person and which don't belong to a person. So we are then removed from the background. It's not perfect at all, but it's good enough for what it is we're trying to do. Then we pick an original image. So in this case, we pick an image called In the Park by a Swedish artist. This image is from the National Museum of Art's collection in Denmark, in Copenhagen. And then we place ourselves on the image. And right now, that's not super interesting in a way. It's just a collage, so we don't really blend into the image. But in order for us to do that, we use an algorithm called deep painterly harmonization, and then we use some upscaling techniques to kind of like blend us into the image as though we were there from the beginning. So of course, if you ask art historians, this is not necessarily the way that Carl Nordstrom would have drawn people, but to the untrained eye, it kind of looks as though we are painted in somewhat of the same style as at least the background. Yeah. So if you're interested in learning more about the project, it's not something that people can try out yet. It's just a research project, but the entire technology behind it and all the steps are outlined in this blog post. Another project is this one called Behind the Paywall. It's made in collaboration with a US artist. His name is Matt Visco. And the idea behind this project came from an observation both of us had, where we were constantly kind of browsing the web and getting links to articles on news websites from social media. And then every time we clicked them, we kind of ended up behind a paywall. So a lot of the time that I, at least when I made this project in collaboration with Matt, a lot of the time spent online was just clicking all of these links that led to paywalls and then only reading the beginning of the articles. So of course, if you're a bit cheap, then you never read the full article. So what we kind of thought as a bit of a provocation was, could we have algorithms generate the rest of the story? Of course, that's really absurd. Like, wouldn't really make sense to generate or to read this fictional news. But we thought it was an interesting experiment. So from a technical point of view, you can see that right now we can't see the majority of the article, but we can see the headline and maybe a sentence or two more. So what we do is that we take that headline and all visible text, and then we send that to a machine learning model that will then continue the text for us. And we used a fine-tuned version of a model called GPT-2. Now we also have GPT-3. Back then we had the GPT-2, and we fine-tuned it on other New York Times articles. So in that way, it kind of understood that right now, when you see this text, this is the beginning of an article, try to continue the article because it had read lots of other New York Times articles. And we made all of this as a browser plugin. So when you are in Google Chrome and you have this installed, then on New York Times website, every time you see a paywall, you can kind of go behind the paywall. So you can generate fake news, and it will then remove the paywall and paste in that fake news as though it was the original article. Of course, this is purely fictional, so it doesn't, like, it's not true what the article writes, but it's also kind of systematically wrong in a sense, because it's trained on data. We found a data set of New York Times articles from 2016, meaning that its entire worldview is based on what it read from 2016. So it doesn't know about COVID at all. It doesn't really understand how to continue stories around COVID and coronavirus. It thinks that Joe Biden is still vice president, and stuff like that. Yeah. We also wrote quite a lot, our long article, kind of with some thoughts behind the project, also because it's a very provocative project, but what are some of our thoughts on that? And then, unfortunately, the browser extension broke last month because New York Times changed their layout, but we are trying to maybe make a new version where you can also specify whether you want happy news or sad news or Western news or non-Western news. Yeah, so I hope we will continue this project, but right now it's actually broke, just so you know. Okay, another project, and I think this will be one of the last projects before I talk about some ways to get started with some of these techniques. But another project is this one called Perler Beats to Landscapes. And the idea was to try to build something on top of a really interesting tool that was released some years ago by a software company, NVIDIA. So NVIDIA is this company that makes a lot of graphics cards that power machine learning models, but they also do their own research. And a thing they have done is a project called Gaugan, which actually, I think last week they released Gaugan 2, but my project is based on the first version of Gaugan. So Gaugan was this tool where you can draw, you can paint with colors that have meaning. So some colors represent sky, some colors represent tree, cloud, mountain, grass, sea, river, etc. And then you draw the stuff on the left, and then what gets generated is the landscape on the right. And that landscape doesn't exist in real world, but the model is able to generate it because it has seen lots and lots and lots of existing landscapes and with matching kind of maps of where the different categories of stuff is at. So therefore, you can kind of go from this painting to a somewhat realistic fictional landscape. And I thought that was really interesting, but I was interested in also trying to take it away from just the screen. So could you maybe interact with this in a physical way? So I tried to build some landscapes with perla beads. And then I positioned my perla beads underneath a webcam. Then I had a software that was accessing the webcam, trying to then figure out what colors did I put where, like kind of what categories of landscapes. And that turned out to be pretty tricky because perla beads have holes and they shine. So I needed to do some blurring and a bit of computer vision tricks. But I ended up having more or less stable areas of these different colors where you have the sky and the clouds and the river and the grass and the tree. Of course, the tree is a bit covered in grass and river, but other than that, it's like more or less stable areas. And then I sent that image to a clone of Gauguin, something called Spade Landscapes. And then what I get back is a more or less realistic looking image that kind of reflects my perla beads landscapes. So if someone wants to try this music or this model, not with the perla beads though, I used this inside a machine learning software called Runway. So here's a link to that. And speaking of that, then these are some of the favorite tools that I like to use for doing stuff with machine learning. And these are also some of the tools I teach when I do workshops. So first off is ML5.js. ML5.js is a JavaScript library, so it's something you code. You need to be able to code a bit, but if you are familiar with maybe tools like processing or P5.js, then it's pretty familiar. And it calls itself the friendly machine learning library for the web, which I think is really nice. From a technical point of view, it takes something called TensorFlow.js, but then makes it quite a lot simpler to interact with. So it's a good place to start. If you know a bit of coding or you aren't afraid of coding a bit, then it's really, really, really cool. Then I would also recommend the new version of Teachable Machine. In that one, you can classify both images, but also body poses and sounds. And then you can actually export the model and use it in your own project. And the teaching part is done fully with a graphical user interface, so it's very easy to get started with. And then finally, there's a tool called Runway, which can kind of allow people who aren't coders or people who don't have a very powerful computer to still interact with pretty big and complicated machine learning models. It's not an open source software, so it costs a bit of money, but it's a good way to get started if, for instance, you want to train your own StyleGAN model to generate new images, for instance. So those were some recommendations. Then I think I'll end up this talk before we get to questions with the 3 questions I had. So Katie Lounge asked me these 3 questions, and instead of trying to reply to them myself, I had a software, a machine learning model called GPT-3 kind of answer them on my behalf. So maybe a bit of a backstory around that. So if we take this first question, then maybe some of you know about, OpenAI has this tool called GPT-3, which is pretty convincing in terms of trying to continue text. So what I did essentially was that I asked these questions to GPT-3, and then I made it answer. I also wrote a bit about myself. So I said, interaction designer Andreas Refsgaard in an interview about design, something like that. I wrote a bit more though, and then you can then press generate, and then GPT-3 will try to then continue the text. And right now it even also continues the answers and the questions. Okay, but we're only interested in the answers. And then what I did with the answers, I then took the answers, put them into a tool of mine, a upcoming project that I've made, which is to begin with a Danish project, but I made a tweak for today where I have this, where the reply to the question will come out of my own mouth. So this is a very, very weird way to answer your questions, but that's what I felt like. So right now I'll cover my mouth because otherwise it will come out. But then, yeah, to this first question, what type of significance does design have to you? When I reveal my mouth and I'll open it, then the words from the answer should drop out of my mouth. So 1 second. Okay, so that's my, or GPT-3's reply on my behalf to the first question. Let's try to go to the next question. Okay, and the final question. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I can see claps. I don't hear anything yet. Maybe we'll turn the sound back on. But yeah, those were my answers. Yeah, so thanks for watching, and yeah, I think now we have some time for questions.
Well, thank you, Andreas. I think it was very interesting. I can definitely say that to everyone because because I've never seen so much laughter during a talk like in yours in the KD Lounge ever. I mean, in any talk. It was really inspiring, and I'm really grateful that you took the time to be with us. And now I think we can, maybe there are some questions you want to ask him. Maybe you can also make your stance to his 3 answers to the 3 questions we asked him before. And I think, yeah, just let us know what you think about the talk and about him. Yeah. And Kati also has a microphone so that everyone and him can hear you.
Yes, I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hello. So thank you very much for your talk. It was so much fun. I have a question. How do you normally start? Do you think about like real life problems and think, yeah, you can change that with technology, or do you like fiddle around in your programs till you find something that is cool and interesting?
Yeah, so I think when I studied design, we were kind of taught to start from real life problems. Me moving more and more away from design and more towards art, I don't necessarily try to solve problems. I try to ask new questions, and a lot of my inspiration comes from just playing around with technology. So when new technology come around, I try to like figure out how it works, and then I'm especially interested in how it doesn't really work, like what it claims to be able to do, and then how it fails. So I get lots of ideas from technology, which I think is kind of the opposite of what you're taught at design school, or at least what I was taught. But that's how I get ideas. Other people get ideas in other ways, and that's perfectly fine. And lots of people actually solve problems. I don't think I solve problems, but I ask new questions. Yeah.
Another question? Okay.
So thank you very much for the talk. In the projects you've shown, there were lots of projects that you did for kids, and I was curious how it comes that that you do interaction with kids, and like what you have to say about working with kids in comparison to working with grown-ups in technology.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's working with kids is actually not something I specifically have like tried to do, but because a lot of my stuff is kind of like playful and makes people laugh and is silly, then lots of people who maybe organize tech events that are related to kids, then they ask me. But it's never been something I actively tried to do. I think working with kids, the cool thing about it though is that they are extremely honest. So if they think something is boring, then they'll say it's boring and they'll walk away. And grown-ups, they'll be like, okay. And so in that way, I think like kids don't have a filter. So it's a very honest response. Then again, also kids break stuff. So if you do installations that are supposed to be up permanently and they are aimed at kids, then it's actually like technically kind of tricky because they'll just like they'll break stuff. Yeah. I don't know. I'm actually becoming a dad later this month. So it'll be interesting to see if that changes how I kind of work with the stuff I do for kids. Yeah. I hope that answers it.
Yes. The next question.
Hey, thank you for the talk. This might be a weird question. You don't have to answer if you're not comfortable. But what is your main source of income?
No. That's a perfectly fine question, and I think it's important also in design and in art to talk about those things. So I think so it depends from year to year. If you kind of count it in terms of like what do I make most from where per day, then it's definitely freelance work, because I'm kind of specialized. So if I do freelance work that is like something related to interaction design and machine learning, then I can make a decent amount of money from that. So, but typically it's like, that's typically maybe up to half my income. Then a big portion is also teaching. So I teach all the time. I'm teaching this week, for instance, in Copenhagen. In Germany, I teach every year right now, at least at HAV in Hamburg and HFG Schwäbisch Gmünd. I have like maybe 6-7 schools where I teach every year. That gives you some income. It can be okay. Switzerland is really good. So if you can teach in Switzerland, then that's really great. Then teaching teaching companies the exact same thing as you teach students is also financially really good, because you don't necessarily prepare something specific for the company. You just give them the same as the students, because yes, students are important too. And then you just charge like a lot because it's a big company. And if you charge too little, then they think, oh, you're not that good. But if you just charge a lot, then sometimes they think you're good. And then I also get income more and more for public speaking. So of course this is an exception because you're a student organization. I think that's super cool. So this one is a free talk. But if you were a big company, I would charge you a lot. Yeah.
Thank you. Some other questions?
So when you printed your books, you told us, or you mentioned that it was done in 2019. So you said like, probably if you do it now, it will change a little bit more. So do you think maybe how or how much will AI change, or maybe what can you estimate a little bit about the future? Will there be other technologies like that, or a different approach to AI?
Yeah, so if we talk about the book project as an example, then the books we made back then, they were unreadable, to be honest. Like you could read each sentence and it would kind of make sense, but as a whole book over 200 pages, it just didn't make any sense. It didn't, like what happened on page 1 had almost had nothing to do with what happened on page 100. Now you have machine learning models, for instance, with text that have to some extent reached human levels of writing. So GPT-3 can write way faster than I can. It can write in English, which for me is my second language. So I'm not that good at writing correctly in English. And I can kind of steer it to write all sorts of things. And I can like say, okay, give me 100 novels about this and that topic in this tone of voice, go. And then I can kind of pick out the ones I like and maybe use those myself as a starting point, or say that what the computer made is fair enough to send further. So I think we are like increasingly reaching a level where what the computer spits out is not only just like kind of interesting because the computer somehow made it. You could also argue whether it made it or I made it or OpenAI made it or whatever. But it's not only interesting because it comes from the computer, but it's also interesting because the quality of it is really good. Also, something like stock photos, for instance, you can now generate images that can compete with stock photography. And when you generate them, then there's no photographer who needs to get money. So then, of course, companies like really trying to push that because that way they can lower their expenses and stuff. Yeah. So I think like we are kind of right. We have to take it very seriously, and we have to also see it both as competition in a sense, but also as partners to collaborate with. Because if you become good at doing something in collaboration with machine learning algorithms, then you can increase your creativity quite a lot, I would say. And maybe also some of the tasks that are a bit repetitive, you can kind of like steer algorithms to do those in specific ways so you can focus on other things yourself.
Okay, thank you. We have one question from the YouTube chat. So, is there an upcoming technology or tool you're looking forward to tackle for the next project?
I've been playing a bit around with a technique which comes from some research from OpenAI. They called it DAL-E, and it's kind of text to image. So you just give a prompt where you say, "Give me a armchair in the shape of an avocado," and it tries to come up with different armchairs that are shaped like avocados, which is a weird combination. something that actually would take a human being some time to try to draw, but the results from that is pretty convincing. And they didn't put out their code yet, but people have then since that tried to kind of like do some of the same in other ways, and it's often referred to with terms like clip plus VQGAN. There's also other ways. Sometimes you call it big sleep. But yeah, generating images from simple text prompts. So the only thing you do is to write a text that then generates an image. That's something I'm pretty interested in, and I think it's a field that will change a lot about how we think about and work with digital images in the future.
Okay, thank you. It's also funny. So another question from YouTube. Do you think AI will improve society and our lives long term? And if you think so, what could be the biggest positive impacts?
Sorry, what can you repeat the first part of the question?
Do you think AI will improve society and our lives long term?
Whether it will improve?
Yeah, improve.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry. As I guess like, so it will improve some people's lives, and it will take away some people's jobs. It will make some people quite rich, and lots of people who don't own the data, have stocks in the big companies, make them more poor. So it's very hard to kind of say, yes, it will improve, because I'm sure it will improve human beings' lives, but it will also have lots of negative consequences. It can also be used for in totalitarian societies, then face recognition, like stuff like that will, it is already improving people's lives and making people's lives worse. So I think that will continue and will grow. So technology is, in my opinion, often doing both things at the same time.
Okay, another question here.
Do you have an idea how to control the negative effects of AI on people? I maybe have some personal small ideas, but I don't think I'm an artist who works with these techniques, and I think my goal is to make people more aware and make them interested and make more people join the conversation about AI. Then what I think about a specific technology is maybe not that interesting, but my main goal is just to have more people be interested in it and have more of a diverse crowd join the conversation. So it's not just people like me. And that's also why I typically teach design students, and I teach art students, or I teach maybe also sometimes sociology students or law students to be interested in these topics. Computer science students, they don't care about me. They're just going at it.
Okay, thank you. I think okay, one last question.
At your career, was there some point where you thought, or some situation where you thought, wow, now it's taking off, and what caused the situation, or how did you get to that point?
Yeah, definitely. So my final project when I was a student, which was the first project I think I showed in this talk, was this musical instrument that you could control with your eyes and with your face, and that got some international press, and I won an award for best student project at an Interaction Design Award, and it got on some websites. So from that, I started getting asked to do some talks and do some other work that was kind of related. So I think I was very lucky that project kind of hit nicely, and gave me a lot of opportunities.
Okay, thank you. Okay, one last question.
Hey, thank you for the talk. So I was wondering, since you said that AI is going to change a lot of lives of people, like for the better and for the worse, do you ever feel morally conflicted about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think, or can you be more specific in terms of my role, maybe in the moral conflict?
Yeah, like you know that there are going to be negative changes for people, like people are getting poorer, losing their jobs and everything. So do you ever feel conflicted about helping to change AI to that point that it will negatively affect people?
I think that would be overestimating what I can do. I'm not a person who's actively kind of making these algorithms that do stuff. I'm not even an early adopter. I'm kind of like a medium adopter that sees what is out there, and then I make art with it. But I am not in a situation where I can kind of like build new groundbreaking stuff, nor kind of control the way things are going. But I can kind of try to include more people in the conversation, and I can also try to, via my artworks, criticize some of the things. So for instance, I've made some artworks, I didn't show those today, but I made some in a Danish context that criticizes public use of face recognition. So I think that's kind of what I can do. Then I must also be honest to say that I'm sometimes conflicted in terms of work, like who do I work for? And I've worked for big tech companies. And I've worked for them on projects that I felt were for the good, but some of those tech companies would also have projects that I would be hesitant towards, and I've also refused several times to work for things. Also, yeah, specific projects and specific companies in specific countries. So it's a hard question to answer. It's something I think about and think more about than I did maybe when I was in my 20s. But also at the same time, sometimes people think that I am actually actively making this technology, and that's a mistake. I'm not. I'm making small tweaks of existing things that people who are way smarter than me are doing. So I'm kind of just showing people what is already possible in weird ways and try to make you laugh, but then also try to make you think about what this means.
Okay, so now we're switching to Eric.
Hello again. Well, thank you for this nice conversation with you, Andreas. And yeah, I think a lot of questions were answered. Some are still up to the discussion, but I mean that's the whole point of it. So I think there's so much to think about in the future about what you raise with your projects, and that's why we also set up 2 IMAX where you can like test out the projects, which Andreas has done. So the previews which he has done in the talk are also available for you to test out. And well, I think now is the time to say some thank yous to a lot of people who have helped us with the stream and the talk in general. I mean, at first, thank you, Andreas. It was really amazing, really inspiring, and yeah, really nice that you took the time. Then, not in a particular order, but I would like to thank the KD Launch team, which consists of Kati, Jill, Pia, Leon, Tadeo, and me, and myself. Thank you. And so another few shoutouts, mainly to Felix, who made these awesome sounds for all our videos and animations. Yeah. And also to Alex and Luis, who helped us with the rendering, because it's pretty intense. And yeah, that was great as well. And Ida, who is taking analog photos from all our events, and they will be released or developed and then released soon. Stay tuned for that on our Instagram. I think I'm missing some people, but I mean, to the cafe team who helped us with the bar, and yeah, I hope that was everyone. And maybe just to let you know, we also got some. I mean, we have to finance all this stuff, and so we have merch and posters and also like small earrings of the mobile. And if you want to, you can check them out. Maybe someone can bring a t-shirt and a sweater and a poster to the front. Teddy, maybe you can take the camera. Yeah, nice. So this is really stuff, I would say. So they feature the mobile, all the stuff, and also the posters. I mean, it's definitely not planned what you're doing right now, but I hope you like it. It would be really nice if you support this project. Bye bye. Yeah. Well, that was weird, but yeah. I think that's it. And what? Okay. And maybe, Andreas, if it is possible for you, maybe if someone has still questions, normally they are up to, like lecturers stay a little bit, and if someone has still questions, they can still ask them. And so we can just leave the Zoom right here and play some music, and you can ask him over Zoom, and the other ones can check out his work, buy a few drinks, buy some merch, and yeah. And so thank you everyone for tuning in, also on the stream, and until next time.